let's have a sesh on crowdfunding. So crowdfunding is when you are raising finance from a large amount of people who each contribute relatively a small amount of finance in exchange for a share of the venture or project. That is different to an angel investor, where it's likely to be a source of finance from a small amount of people, or maybe just one person who gives a relatively large chunk or all the chunk of the money. Well, that's the difference. But sticking with crowdfunding, it's a long-term source of finance, and it's certainly an external source of finance. It's coming from outside the business, and it is an alternative form of equity finance, alternative to the usual equity finance that is issuing shares, being a limited company. And it is for startup and new businesses, and they will usually fund from a crowd or crowdfund through internet websites such as Kickstarter. The pros and the cons of crowdfunding. Well, the first pro is that because it's a form of equity finance, well, no repayments need to be made because it's not a debt, and no repayments need to be made, and additionally, no interest needs to be paid. So you're saving on your costs, lower costs. Number two is that it's usually seen as excellent exposure by using crowdfunding on several bases. Number one is that you've got a large amount of people who've invested, who've contributed to your business. And so they're rooting for you, and they're going to, through word of mouth or through social media, gas you up. And secondly, it's very common for businesses that are crowdfunded or use crowdfunding to get lots of social media attention. A great example of that is in fact Oculus VR, the VR headsets, where they were financed through crowdfunding, and eventually actually Facebook bought them out for an enormous amount of cash versus the original amount of cash that was in fact crowdfunded. Number three is that you've got lots of people who are each contributing a small amount, but you've got lots of people investing in your business. So that means you might have a lot of people that have got great ideas for you of how you could improve. So you could have good feedback. And you've got to remember, they are definitely on your side because they have invested a small amount in your business. So they care. They're on the same side as you. So maybe their feedback is going to be good and aligned with you. The cons of crowdfunding. Number one, well, because you've given up a split of the organisation, then if profits are made, they're going to have to be shared. And that means less profits for you as the founder of the business. Number two is if the venture or the project fails and you do a crowdfunding exercise, but you don't actually end up with a financially successful business and it in fact goes bust, well, then in that case, you might lose reputation if you want to try and fund for new ventures or projects in the future, because you would have done it on a mass public scale where everyone's seen you fail. And thirdly, you could argue that investors, they may have very limited expertise because yes, you've got this large amount of people, but what do they know? Because they're investing small amounts. It could be as low as £1. And if someone's investing £1 in a business, do they really know anything about that business? Have they really studied it? Have they really looked into it? And are they really going to have good advice for you and for your business to make sure that you improve in the future? So there's the pros and the cons. There's also some evaluation points to think about with crowdfunding. Well, in reality is the most successful businesses and those that suit crowdfunding, well, they've got great social media game. That's the first thing. Number two is that the product or the service is easy to understand, because if people get it, then it will be able to raise funding from the crowd, because on the website, people say, well, that's a great idea, I want to have a bit of that. And thirdly, it often suits niche products who may not have been able to get finance in other ways, but they managed to using crowdfunding. So I hope that helps with crowdfunding, and I'll see you at the next sesh.